Yeah, I'm showing off my desert ironwood collection. Desert ironwood is really expensive wood, and I don't buy it at its most expensive. I scour my few trusted sources, and sometimes you'll catch a heck of a sale or a really good deal, and I buy it then. Which these are desert ironwood blocks. Desert ironwood is very, very hard to cut. It is one of the hardest woods on the Janka scale, Janka. It's a scale that they grade the hardness of woods, and desert ironwood is way up there as one of the hardest woods, which is why it's such a good knife handle wood, because it doesn't expand and contract with temperature or moisture. And it's also a very pretty wood. It's somewhat harder to work with. It's a lot harder to sand when you sand it by hand, but the end product is so worth it. And I was just showing you this grade A, top of the line block of desert ironwood. I haven't put it on anything because, well, I'm getting to that, and I think I'm going to use it on one. This is all desert ironwood. This is the newest stuff that I just bought here, and that's some older stuff that I have, and that's all my desert ironwood. And I'm starting on the neck knife that's going to Indiana. That's getting desert ironwood. That is I gotta heat treat that, and UPS is going to deliver my new oil, my quenching oil, Parks 50. So you know, everything I do, there's room for improvement. And at this point, I have finally got to a point in my knife making where the improvements I'm making are, small improvements. And one of the areas is my quenching oil. It's really important to quench properly. It makes your knife, a proper quench makes your knife harder throughout the material. And a proper tempering brings the hardness down to a level where it can maintain some flexibility and it doesn't chip when you use it and stuff like that. So, okay, come on. Oh God, you're getting heavier, or I'm getting older. So this is what I'm getting at. I've made a lot of little I call them micro improvements. Another micro improvement, I'm going to make a better grinding jig. Another micro improvement is a better table on my belt grinder. And a micro improvement is better quenching oil. Hold on, I'm going to sneak. Golly, I think I blew some brains out on that one. So, here's what I'm finally getting at after, 10 minutes. There's a guild, a knife makers guild. I hate to use the word prestigious, but there's a lot of people that try to get into the knife makers guild. I'm talking about, you can become a general member, but to be a member of the Lone Star Knife Makers Guild, you have to submit 3 of your knives for inspection by a panel of knife makers, and it's not easy to get into. And if you do become a member of the Lone Star Knife Makers Guild, it really, really puts you at a certain level of knife making that you can really be proud of. And that's my goal. After I make this knife, I'm going to start making knives that I want to submit for inspection, and see if I can get into the Lone Star Knife Makers Guild. And, it doesn't really, I suppose on my website it would mean something to somebody that knows what the Knife Makers Guild is, and it would mean something to me. But, on the same hand, I still stand as big a chance at failure as other people that have submitted knives and haven't passed. So, and failure really is painful, and I know that because of the amount of times I tried to pass the ham test and couldn't, and it was very embarrassing, and it's a huge punch right in the pride. And, failure causes you to do a lot of searching in your soul to see if, just how important something is. And I may try again to pass the ham test, but this is another one of them things where if I submit 3 knives and I fail or I don't pass, I don't know how it's going to affect me. I know that it won't be a good feeling, but I think I am finally at the point where I can feel comfortable submitting knives for some expert knife makers to examine. And I went over the parameters and the things they look for, and it's all things that I'm pretty good at. And they examine your plunge lines, and I've mentioned plunge lines before. Plunge lines are when you look at a knife this way, and the bevel, let me zoom you in, and the bevel starts evenly on each side of the blade. Here's a good example. I was pretty good on these plunge lines. Now, they're not perfect. Actually, that was about as... How do I get this to zoom in a little bit more? Okay. Can you see that? This and this, these are called plunge lines. And they even said that nobody's plunge lines are perfect, and they don't expect perfection, but they expect, when they inspect, they expect the plunge lines to be fairly consistent. And if you submit 3 knives and you have 2 plunge lines that are acceptable and 1 plunge line that's not, they would probably pass the knife as long as you met all the other criteria. And the other criteria is no big gaps, between the spine and the handle. Basically, at the end, the same amount of meat on either side of the spine. By meat, I mean wood. The same amount of wood on either side of the spine. A nice handle shape that's finished. No obvious grind line. So that's something I really take a lot of pride in getting out of. So I think that I can pass because, those areas that they inspect are all areas that I have made great efforts and strides in improving. And anyway, that's a goal of mine now. When I finish this neck knife and that Bayou chopper, I'm going to start making a 3-knife set. I'm going to make a BC Special. I'm going to make a Texas Rumble. And probably a dinner skinner, because these are my biggest sellers. And it's a lot of metal. And, I think I'm like 99% positive that I get the knives back. And when I get them back, I'll sell them. But anyway, I just thought I'd let you know what my goal is. I'm fixing to grind the bevels on this and start sanding on it. And I may get this knife ready for heat treating like that one today. It's got to be a satin finish because it's going to be an actual using knife. And okay, so let's get started. All right, this is the neck knife going to Indiana. I've got it roughly shaped, but I mentioned before that you can't put the handles on unless you have the nose of the handles finished completely, because you can't finish the nose of the handles without screwing up the blade. So that's what I'm doing. I'm up to 320, and I'm going to go to 400 and then put this on my buffer and buff the nose, and it'll look all pretty and shiny. Alright, the handles are ready. And now I gotta dike them this side of the blade and the edge, scribe my plunge lines, and then get on the belt grinder and make a knife out of it. Here's another thing I do. I chamfer those holes. And the reason is when I epoxy the handles on, the epoxy helps to hold the pins steady, and it just makes for a better handle. Now, this is the bit I use. It's called the chamfering bit. I forget the degree. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have to order an 80-degree chamfering bit, because when I get to building my new sharpening jig, that's what I'm going to need, because I'm using countersunk stainless hex screws with a hex head, and so I need a steeper, a wider chamfering bit. Okay, I'm going to chamfer these holes, and I'll show you what they look like after they've been chamfered. Here's a look at them now, and here's a look at them after. That's another thing those the Knife Makers Guild looks for, is your what do they call it? I'm going to use the word equal pins to make sure your pins are centered, and you know, that's something I mark out the center before I drill them with calipers. So what I do is measure the distance from outside to outside, and I divide it by 2, and then I just scribe a line, and that's where you can actually see the line. And sometimes I'll scribe the line from both sides, and wherever the lines intersect is the center. Alrighty, now I'm going to take my calipers and mark my center grinding line, mark my bevel grind lines, and put it on the grinder. That's a 1/2 inch. That's how far I come up with grind lines. Now, zero it, measure the thickness, 0.140. I think it's going to be 70. 0.07. Yep, perfect. And then I do this, and that is my center line, and I grind into that, and then my plunge line that is where I start my belt, so that the plunge lines are equal on either side. Okay, put everything away. I'm going to show you what I've done over here. I like being able to look out at the deer and the cows and all that. So I moved everything. These 2 wood bars, I moved everything up. And I moved this over as far as I could and still be able to get screws in there. And then I put magnetic strips up. So I'm gonna do more of my work over here, and I'm gonna be a little more careful about not messing up my bench. Alrighty, so here we go. I'm gonna grind the, well, let me get my, I'll show you how I do that. You okay? This is my original bevel grinder. And my new one is going to be similar to this, but oh, it's going to be so much nicer. Okay, here I go. You see the hole there? I center that hole up. As a matter of fact, I have a line scribed on this side that you can see through the hole, and that is dead center. And the reason I do that is so there's no fluctuation in the grind lines. And these bolts, the heads are completely level. That's what I set this on. And then I take that C-clamp and I hold it on back here. And then when I get one side done, I flip it over and do the other side, just like that. Show you in a minute. See, that's what I'm talking about. The older I get, the more I like looking at animals instead of people. All right, this is a 60 grit belt. There is one side of my bevel. Now, I'm gonna take the 60 grit belt off. I'm gonna put a 120 on there so I can polish off the deepest of the grits. It just makes it a little easier to hand sand. Now we sand. All right. I have got both of these. Let me undo the, oh, that is such an annoying sounding fan. Alrighty, I am ready to heat treat this knife. And I've got the Bayou chopper that handles the nose of it. I got the nose sanded. That's going to be one pretty hunk of wood. I think, now I'm only using brass pins because I haven't cut my thong tube. I just haven't cut it yet. So I'm gonna have a thong here. Now here's the thing. I have stainless, actually this is sold. I am gonna use it. I'm gonna whack trees and cut limbs and then I'll take my sandpaper and clean it all back up and make it pretty like that, you know. And that little tiny flaw right there, there's just no getting it out without sanded so much that this grind line here would be affected, and it would make it, what it would do is look, the grind line would come this way and then it would bobble up, you know. And it's just better to leave that little tiny peck there. The rest of the knife looks good. And tomorrow I will heat treat it. So since it's sold, I'm gonna ask the person who's bought it if they want stainless or brass, since I have stainless tube now too. I'm gonna do that right now. Okay, the person that's buying that wants stainless, so let me get a couple of stainless pins out. And here's the stainless tube. I gotta cut a few. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the whole thing up, and I haven't gotten around to, after my cleanup I sort of didn't want to make a mess, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut it all up now. Okay, I think I already said that the person wanted stainless, so I've got the stainless pins, stainless thong tube. I'm really looking forward to putting this together. And yeah, okay. So that's all I can do today. I'm gonna take my vacuum and clean up the little bit of mess I've made so far. It's just so much easier to clean as I go than to do a big cleanup after several knives. And I don't know how much of this I want to tell you, because you know, some people don't want to hear every little detail of my life. I'm going to go ahead and tell you this. My wife and I, you know, we're on fixed incomes. It's not a lot of money, and if I die, my wife is going to really suffer here, having a hard time, you know, if AC went out. So, you know, I worry about this constantly. I'm a big fat guy in bad health, and I'm just looking into the future. My wife is older than me. Everybody knows that. That's not something that's a secret. But I still think that I'm probably going to die before her. And I worry about this constantly, about leaving her with not enough money to live on. Should I die, she'll go from what she's getting every month, which is, after a lifetime of working, it blows my mind that that's all she's getting. But she'll get bumped up to what I'm getting, which still is poverty. You know, if that's all she had, it would be poverty. And probably a couple of years worth of my Google AdSense money, which is important. But I don't know, if I were to die, how she would be able to continue to get that money. You know, she has my passwords and all that, and she could reply to comments as me. We've talked about this. It's morbid, but it's something you gotta look, you know, it's something you gotta plan for. And the motorcycles, you know, I have a pickup truck payment and 2 motorcycle payments. And I have had a hard time enjoying the motorcycle because, you know, the pickup truck is an absolute necessity. And I actually, compared to the value of the pickup truck, I don't owe much on it. And if she had to let the motorcycles go, I think she could afford to make the pickup truck payment, as long as Google AdSense, the money still held out, you know. So just sitting here thinking of this today, you know, she was in here, we were talking about it, and I was thinking about how hard it is for me to enjoy riding that motorcycle, and all I can think of is the payment going through my head, bup, 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 bup. And what I'm hearing is $500, $500, $500. It's really hard to put that out of your head. I mean, we can afford it as long as nothing changes. But, you know, it's hard to enjoy life knowing that if I die, my wife is going to really suffer financially. So we have decided that the world, there is countries falling financially. Sri Lanka, Pakistan is not doing well. China is doing very poor. As a matter of fact, there's been some banks that have stopped people from withdrawing cash. And there's other countries that are, you know, on the verge of, what do you call it, bankruptcy, when their economy collapses and they default on their debts. So looking at the world, the big picture, and our country and the wars, and how we are injecting ourselves into a war that has absolutely nothing to do with us. And who knows what tomorrow holds. So we've both decided just to enjoy every day and deal with tomorrow. So that was a whole lot of talking to tell you that. But the debt burden that we have, normally, years ago, it wouldn't have been a problem. But now, I mean, before, if you were in a bind, you'd just work more. No, not a problem. Now, we don't have that option. There's no way to make extra money. All the money I make on knife making, it goes back into wood and sandpaper and steel and all that. So I can't count on knife making money for anything but keeping the knife shop going. I mean, it's a hobby. And I don't have to dip into my personal income to keep this shop going because I sell the knives. And that's all I do. I make just enough to continue making knives. So I don't count this as any source of income. That's it. I may not even put that up because my wife may not even want me telling that to people, about debt. So that's it. We have no credit card debt. We have a pickup note and 2 motorcycle payments. Our house is paid for, and that, nothing would be a worry except our taxes every year for living here. If I were to die, my wife wouldn't even be able to pay the taxes. And it's a real problem, dying. And it's something you got to think about especially when you're my size, big fat guy with high blood pressure and borderline diabetes and all the things that I've had happen to me, damage to my body and lungs. And anyway, I just feel better talking about it. So there you go. One last thing, I just checked my Amazon, and UPS is going to deliver that quenching oil today. So tomorrow, I got to pull all that canola oil out of my quenching tank and put the Parks 50 in it, and then heat treat these 2 knives. Heat treat and then temper. So tomorrow, by the end of the day tomorrow, these will be ready for clean up and handles the next day. I'm getting there, a little at a time. It's here, it's here, it's here. All right. I can't believe I got this for what I got it for. Okay, tomorrow I guess I'm just gonna have to dip the oil out of there like I did before, and I saved the canola oil jugs, and I'll just put it back in those jugs, and tomorrow I will have professional grade quenching oil.